Okay, let's get back to the earlier events where Kayla Megwa in Ward A, we understand that's where this very unfortunate violence took place, and hear what she had to say.
Something's just happened here. No. 3, 2, 1. Right here at Ward 4 in Lokoja, the election started really peacefully. The process was going really smoothly, and then all of a sudden we had gunshots in the air, and now all the election materials and all the ballots that were cast have just disappeared. People came in, unknown gunmen came in here with masks on and guns, and they were shooting, and we had to hide. And we just came out of hiding to find out that every election material has been taken away. As you can see behind me, the police are here right now, police vehicles, and everyone trying to understand what has happened and to make sense of the situation. But that is what has happened right here at Ward 4 at the Crowther Memorial College, right here in Lokoja. Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
Slightly shaken.
Yeah.
Slightly shaken.
Oh, definitely. I mean, everyone would have to take cover. I mean, just hearing the sound of a gunshot, that's definitely going to get anyone, you know, destabilized. I mean,
because for this kind of violence to take place, it will mean the security has been briefed, and this is the incident that she's just reported. But this one is not a different one that Terry Kumi talked about. You can just see from a distance that there's just a lot of skirmishes right there in the inside. Let's just hear it.
The name of that ward is Iluofa or something, ward 002, and that's also in Kogi. It's worrisome that this is going on right now. While I'm very, very concerned for the results, you know, or the authenticity, the viability that, okay, people can trust the results that are going to come out of the elections in these areas where we have pockets of trouble. The question you want to ask is, how safe are the people feeling right now?
Very true indeed. But let's get back to Dare Idowu in Bayelsa State, where he is, to give us more updates. Dare, what more do you have for us? I was earlier asking you a couple of questions with regards to the spontaneous nature that these security details can move in. We just coming from Kogi State now, and we can see some level of violence that took place there. How quickly are the security details, the police officers positioned to move in an eventuality of upheavals of violence breaking out, especially in places like in Bayelsa?
Yes, thank you very much. Of course, you understand the terrain. I've been speaking about that. In Bayelsa State, it's a different ball game. But the police, the security operatives, they've been talking about the fact that they've got everywhere covered. How well covered, we may not be able to say right now. It is way too early. But in all of our interviews with security officials, they are assuring us that everywhere is covered. They haven't got any reports of violence. Of course, the build up to this particular election, where we've reported cases of violence and riddled with a whole lot of irregularities at the party level. But at this point, and especially where we are in Yenegua, we haven't heard of any. Talking about violence, I've got something quite interesting here. There's someone standing with a banner. It says, "Say no to violence." So let's talk to you about this. What prompted this message?
This message is coming from the Christian group. We were mobilized by INEC to pass this message across to our various churches, and then we also think of passing it within the electoral process going on. in the place where they are doing the election, ballot box snatching, violence, rigging, and vote buying is not necessary, because it is not we to begin to sell out our destiny for any gain, which we will not benefit from it. Because we are in a society where people have been deceived, a lot of people have deceived us, and then with the decay going on in society, makes it necessary that we should correct it.
Thank you very much. Beyond this particular message, you are on the ground right now. Are you happy with what you've seen so far?
I'm very much happy with what I'm seeing in this place, because I heard that there is no violence going on within this very area. But I just hear the news of Apollo and some other part. But I pray that as a child of God, and then someone defending the Christian group, we are praying that there should be no bloodshed. No one that is shedding blood, a bloodshedder is a murderer. Whoever that kills his neighbor in the name of election is a murderer. And no murderer will have eternal life.
That's a very clear message there. But aside violence, vote buying is another major challenge with the Nigerian electoral process. Here at EPIA 3, have you seen any kind of vote buying or anyone trying to manipulate the process?
Exactly. We just discussed on that too. Me and one other pastor, we just discussed on that. There is vote buying going on, and we don't know we cannot mention parties in case of this. But buying is going on in the various parties. They are doing buying, and then it's like kind of a monopolizing the electoral process. And also, someone even make a joke that it's a monocracy. So you cannot buy vote and elect by voting through buying. That is not necessary.
Thank you very much, sir, for talking to us. Let's talk again about some other issues around here, which I basically pointed out earlier, but because I didn't quite move to this direction. This is the voting area, and usually the queues are supposed to be right here with people, and you can see them. They've grown impatient. There's been a few altercations here and there since morning, basically because of the fact that electoral officers didn't come on time, and people are asking the questions: are the electoral officers even fast enough to execute this particular process? Because ordinarily, normally, voting should end by 2, and you can still see the queue. And this is supposed to be one of the cubicles that, after you get accredited there, certified okay by the electoral officers, you're supposed to come here, cast your vote without anyone knowing what you're doing there. But the whole place is crowded because there seems to be a slight, coordination problem. In other units around there, maybe not. They seem to have a way around that, but that impatience is growing, and quite fast as well. Back to your studio.
It'll seem, Dare, that the fears of voter apathy that had gone on before this process began doesn't seem to be happening where you are right now. What do you think is responsible for that? Because many people were afraid that voters were not going to come out. There was going to be a very low turnout of voters. That doesn't seem to be the case where you are right now.
Yeah, I didn't quite get the question, but I picked voter apathy. And if you're talking about voter apathy, you and I have been following this election. We saw in the build-up of the election, the violence and attacks here and there. But one thing that I can tell you right here, if you're going to judge by what you're seeing on the field right now, you see people, there've been a whole lot of people since morning trying to cast their votes. And well, you cannot judge by the number of people you see at the polling booths or the polling unit at the points. At the end of the day, by the time INEC collects and gets the numbers together, checks the number of registered voters or people with PVCs, and when you match that with the total number of people who eventually voted, then you will be able to ascertain that at least this number of people eventually voted and there was no voter apathy. In most cases, when there is this analysis about voter apathy, I always want to rely on the statistics and the percentage rather than the crowd you see at the polling units.
Okay, Dari, we just want you to keep up the tempo very high, because we understand that there may be some level of violence, also ballot box snatching. We're getting unconfirmed reports about that at the moment in southern Ijaw and Nembe. Of course, you remember that Nembe is one of the flashpoints leading up to these elections, where a particular party went out to campaign and then had these sporadic shootings, and then everybody was dispersed. But we're going to go on a short break now. On return, we'll go to Kogi as well as Bayelsa again to bring you updates here in the election coverage studios of Channels Television. We're focusing on Kogi as well as Bayelsa. Join us again. We're bringing you the information live from Bayelsa as well as Kogi State on the happenings on this day, the D-Day for the elections of the governorship, and in Kogi, to be specific, the senatorial elections also taking place simultaneously in that state. We did bring you some information of violence, pockets of violence. Some people have categorized it as medium-sized violence. That's the first one in Dekina in Kogi State, where the deputy governorship candidate went there to vote. But let's let you get an up sound on what actually transpired.
No, they should go. No, they will move to material. Where is that police? I want him out of this.
And this took place at Ajayi Crowder Primary School in Lokoja, where there were gunshots, that were heard, and of course everyone had to scamper to safety in order to ensure that no one is caught in the crossfire, whatever it was. We heard ballot boxes were snatched away, and of course security men were not at the point apparently to ensure that that didn't happen, but then, as it were, that one has happened, and of course the place calm and peace has seemingly returned. And here you have Iluofa, Ward 002 in Kogi, where Terry Kumi mentioned to us the other time, our correspondent, that things may have gone a little awry. How far this will affect the process is yet to be seen in a little while. As soon as we have more, most certainly we will get back to you. One of the things that gives me concern is how much this will be.
We have this one as well. This is just happening moments ago. That is Ayetoro again in Kogi State. We have confirmed reports of sporadic shootings. Those are some of the ballot papers that have been scattered all over the floor, and it's an abandoned scene. If you can see this far, that is what it seems to suggest, that this is a polling unit that has been abandoned. Those are electoral materials destroyed, and we're waiting to get more information from our correspondents who are strategically positioned to try to get you the best and the cleanest information true as they come through, even for us here in the studios.
Well, and of course, some of these images of INEC officials being ferried.
This is no joke. These guys are facing the flood.
I really don't.
They are.
I don't know how they do it, but I can't stand what they're doing. I don't know what would have happened if I had to be sent to that area. I don't know what I would do.
Or if you had to go there to cast your votes.
Why would I even go there in the first place? You know,
Dobro told us that it was a heavy downpour this morning, and as a result, a lot of places got flooded.
Well, this
perhaps
is
if
flooding.
they're just patient a little, the waters will recede before the end of the day, and they will be able to still get through to their polling units and then cast their ballots.
Well, it was as a result of the flooding that voting materials couldn't be moved in on time, and voting accreditation and all of that couldn't begin as and when due. And these are other images from the polling areas at Otuoke in Bayelsa State. Security men are doing what they need to do. All right, let's get back to Abuja now. There were some issues that were raised the other time about clusters of election, clusters of voters at the election points in Yenagoa, Bayelsa State, where our correspondent said in some parts of that place, the INEC officials got it right, but then in other parts, they seemed to be struggling, and some the voting cubicles were too close to the crowd. So, Mr. Okoye, you saw and listened to some of the comments that have been passed from our correspondent on ground in Otuoke. What happens in that situation where there are clusters of voters too close to the voting area, and what then do you think the people can do? How do we correct that to make sure that it doesn't get worse than it already is?
Well, you know, in some polling units, the voters are very orderly and organize themselves and in some instances, the presiding officers give numbers to all the voters depending on when they came. But in other places, in other polling units, the voters may be rowdy, some of them may not be taking instructions and so on. So sometimes the supervisors come in and assist them to organize the lines. Sometimes the police officers on duty assist them to organize the lines. Sometimes some presiding officers are more adept, and some of them are more clever than others, and they organize their polling units well, and things go well. So my presumption is that some of the presiding officers ought to assist the others who have not organized their units well to organize, and the supervisors ought to be going around to also assist in making sure that things go well in these polling units. But you know, in instances where the voters refuse to listen to the ad hoc staff and even refuse to listen to the security officers on ground, there is very, very little you can do. So I really believe that we must imbibe good electoral behavior, and part of good electoral behavior entails people being orderly at polling units and not surging towards presiding officers and making sure that they don't even they get disorganized and don't conduct and don't carry out the activities in a very, very orderly manner. And when you also do this, you compromise the secrecy of the vote in terms of where the ballot, the cubicle will be and where the ballot boxes will be. So I believe that as we progress, they will get things right, and everybody who is on the queue or who has turned up to vote will definitely vote.
Well, it's let's also mention that, you know, as we reported to you earlier concerning some areas in Bayelsa State where Dobra was speaking from, there was completely peaceful, no untoward activity, nothing at all that is out of hand. Even where Dare Idowu reported from, everything is peaceful, maybe a little raucous, but everything is peaceful. There has so far been no report of any unrest in Bayelsa as at this moment, but of course the concerns in Kogi, you know, those are there. Now, Mr. Okoye, how do you take this on board, the issues that are happening in Kogi as at this moment? Officially, even though you have explained this the other time, the elections ought to close in about an hour from now, maybe a little less than an hour from now, but of course, you said that until the last person votes, nothing happens. I mean, the process will continue. But in the instances that we have had of these pockets of unrest here and there, what is the default position for your officials? What are they supposed to do? And in the event that the people say, look, we want to exercise our franchise, we're going to be patient with you, even though it's a little you know, uneasy here and there, what do you advise that your people should do and that the voter should do?
You know, there are two scenarios here, and there are two possibilities here. In one of the instances, the ballot boxes have been destroyed, the ballot papers have been destroyed, all the election materials have been destroyed, and apparently the safety and security of the presiding officers and assistant presiding officers has completely been compromised. So in that particular instance, nobody will expect the Independent National Electoral Commission to go and provide a new ballot papers, because we print ballot papers based on the number of registered voters in a particular unit, or in a particular ward, or in a particular registration area, or in a particular local government. So we cannot offhand print new ballot papers or deploy new ballot papers to those areas, because some of our ballot papers are customized and they are printed based on, they are color coded and coded to various local governments, and sometimes coded to various registration areas. So there's absolutely nothing that can be done in relation to those areas. But I think that we must condemn in very strong terms this glamorization of violence. People cannot engage in bad behavior and expect to be rewarded for bad behavior. You cannot, rather than encourage people to go and vote, you are busy arming people, you are busy drugging the youth and getting them to go and deploy violence to polling units, rather than deploying intelligence to go and get people to go out and go and vote. So I believe that in one of the scenarios where ballot boxes, ballot papers, and all the election materials have been destroyed, and the presiding officers and assistant presiding officers have been forced to run to safety, there's absolutely nothing we can do. They will write their report and forward to the collation officer for the registration area. In other instances where it is still possible to continue with the election, where there has not been any untoward issue relating to the ballot boxes and the ballot papers and so on and so forth, but it was just an atmosphere of fear and police have been able to intervene, the process can go on. But in other instances where things have been destroyed, it is next to impossibility for us to proceed with it. Based on the report that has been filed by the presiding officers, then the collation officer and the other levels of authority within the collation chain will take a decision and make a determination on what to do in relation to the area.
When you say that there is nothing that can be done, are you inferring that those elections in those areas where especially the ballot boxes have been destroyed, does it mean that it will be an outright cancellation?
No. What I'm saying is that I cannot sit here and make a determination for the collation officers on what to do. I can also not sit here and make a determination on the type of report the presiding officer will write in relation to what has happened. My point is that the determination on what will happen will be based on the report we get from the collation, the presiding officers, the supervisors, and even the electoral officers of that particular area. If it means going back to redo those elections, it will be that determination will be made at a particular stage of the collation process, when the votes from other areas where there has not been any challenge coming, and then we now make a determination whether what has happened, the votes from that particular area where election has not taken place, we have a huge effect or a major effect on the outcome of the elections, in which case we have to go back and redo those elections.
So a lot of people will especially be looking at these four scenarios that played out in Dekina, Ajayi Crowther College, Ilofa. That's what 002, as well as Ayetoro very, very recently. As a matter of fact, is the latest that we have of the skirmishes that broke out in those areas in Kogi State. Many will be looking up to you as INEC to try to give answers to what happens next to them. Because you do remember when we had the situation even in Lagos during the presidential election, in some areas in Lagos where the police officers were there, but they couldn't stop those hoodlums from gaining access to the ballot boxes, and as a matter of fact destroyed them. In this instance, we've not seen any police. The police actually came after, for instance, in Ajayi Crowther College, the police came after those ballot boxes were scattered and destroyed, and some of the ballot papers also scattered and destroyed in the same vein. But what more will be the way out, as a matter of fact, trying to look at solutions to address these concerns? Because it's not the fault of the people, not exactly. These are people who came out to cast their votes. What can INEC do for them in this instance?
Well, the only thing INEC can do for them is to make sure that they have an opportunity of exercising their democratic franchise. Because look, there are some people who take a flight back to their own states in order to go and cast that one ballot, because that one ballot may be a major determinant of their future. So the moment you deny them that opportunity of casting that ballot is more or less akin to denying them or compromising their future. So I believe that every registered voter in Kogi State and every registered voter in Bayelsa who turns up at the polling unit and wants to cast his or her vote must and should be allowed to exercise that franchise. And it is the duty and mandate and responsibility of the Independent National Electoral Commission to make sure that that happens. Now, I cannot see where we have gone wrong in relation to the visuals that have been shown. We deployed the non-sensitive materials on time. We deployed the sensitive materials on time. We trained the presiding officers and deployed them, and they went there to go and make sure that the people have an opportunity to vote. And then some bad people who are engaged in bad behavior, mobilized by some forces who either do not want voting to take place or who want to compromise the voting process, have gone there to make sure that nothing goes on there. Where did INEC go wrong in this particular instance? I think that we need to have a major conversation in this country relating to the extent to which we can deploy security agents and security forces closer to the polling units. Because if they are closer to the polling units, some of these untoward activities will not happen. I am particularly concerned about the young men and women we trained and deployed as presiding officers and assistant presiding officers and the type of trauma they are going through. You look at what is going on in Bayelsa. You can see the UCO members and students in canoes in very difficult circumstances, making sacrifices for this nation, only for some people to go and begin to shoot guns into the air, begin to beat them up, and begin to compromise them. It does not bode well for our democracy. And I believe that we must have a big national conversation on the way forward in relation to some of these issues, because we cannot continue to compromise the safety and security of these young men and women while others believe that they can glamorize violence, deploy violence, and become merchants of violence in order to compromise the electoral process. It is unacceptable, and we must call a spade and get the political elite in this country to make a determination on whether they really believe in one man, one vote, one woman, one vote, and one youth, one vote.
Well, Mr. Okoye, it's one of the things I remember that the national chairman of INEC was quoted to have mentioned at one of the various interagency consultative committee meeting on election security. He had advocated that there should be a new approach to the deployment of security personnel for the elections. Can you tell us if, any new approach or any new style, any new initiative, any new strategy in the deployment of security that INEC championed in the course of all the meetings with the security agencies?
Well, one of the things we insisted on is that the sanctity of our registration centers, where we are going to collect results at the first level, and the sanctity of our local government area offices, where we are also going to collect the results at the local government level, should not be compromised. And the police assured us that they are going to provide adequate security for these two areas. They also assured us that they will also provide adequate security for the inner cordon of the polling units, and also armed police officers will be at the outer cordon. Now, I think that part of the issues we have is a problem of coordination between the police officers and security officers in the inner cordon of the polling units and those ones at the outer cordon. Our presumption is that if there's any untoward issue or any untoward problem in the inner cordon, those in the inner cordon should be in a position within a period of 5 minutes or less than that to get in the armed police officers who are at the outer cordon to move in and restore order or arrest whatever situation arises in such instances. But in some of these isolated incidents, I think that there has been maybe some form of lack of coordination between the two. But I want to really believe that these incidents are not widespread and they are just isolated incidents. And we are also going to isolate them, we house them, and then make a determination on how to get the people to exercise their democratic franchise.
Certainly, there are isolated cases because from all of the reports that we have heard, there are so many polling units, in Kogi State, and we've just had reports, of unrest or some skirmishes in just 4 areas. So most certainly that's quite comforting. In Bayelsa, we haven't had anything. It's been a very peaceful process so far in all of those areas. So kudos again to INEC, one has to say. But then, of course, one cannot but mention occasionally some of these areas because we are looking forward to a time where we won't even talk about any form of unrest whatsoever in the conduct of our elections. Would you say, Mr. Okoye, that, of course, we know that INEC championed a lot in the area of voter education. Would you say that the political parties have done enough in the area of educating the people whom they were asking to vote for them?
No. Look, you can see enthusiasm on the part of the people of these 2 states who want to go and cast their votes. I watched visuals from Bayelsa yesterday where people were enduring all sorts of hardship and we are going on the high sea and they want to go 5 kilometers, a journey of almost 5 hours on the high seas. Some of them came back from Lagos and from distant places and they want to go and cast their votes. The Nigerian people, the people of Kogi and Bayelsa, are not even asking anybody to educate them to go and cast their votes. They want to go. They are enthusiastic and they want to go and exercise their franchise. The problem, the challenge is that the activities of some sections of the political elite is disengaging and disempowering them from going to exercise their democratic franchise. Nobody wants to go and vote and die. And nobody wants to go and vote and get maimed. And nobody wants to go and vote and get his or her house burnt. So I believe that the political education, if there's any, should go to the political elite who do not really believe in this process. But the Nigerian people, the ordinary people of this country, believe in this particular process and they want democracy to flourish and they want the electoral process to be cleaned up. Somebody who goes to the polling unit at 5 o'clock in the morning does not need their political education because the political education is at the polling unit. Somebody who carries cooking utensils and goes to the polling unit in the morning does not need their political education. So I think that the political education should go to the political elite who rather than going to go and canvass for votes, are buying drugs for our use in order to compromise their brains, in order to give them guns, in order to make them to go and do things that are unwholesome and things that are untoward. So I think that the Nigerian people have no problem. The only problem they have is those of us who are in authority, those of us who are in a position, allowing them to go and exercise their democratic franchise. And they don't have a problem. Our problem is with the political elite who, rather than allow the people to be the major determinant of who gets elected and who does not get elected, want to get elected through means and ways that are not sanctioned by the Constitution and by our laws. So for me, the ordinary people of this country are good to go, and they have been doing the right thing and been very, very patriotic and nationalistic in the approach to elections.
Mr. Okoye, we must thank you very much for giving us your time, a very long time you have given us today to try to underline some of those things. But we'll still stay with you a little longer. We're getting confirmed reports from our correspondent, Ella in State, saying that materials at Ward 8 Rack Center in Ekeremo local government area have also been destroyed. We'll furnish you with details of that when we return. Join us again.